Hello everyone, welcome back to Retro Comms. I hope you all are having a great Thanksgiving, surrounded by food, friends, and family. As for me, as usual, I am surrounded by phones. But they're also a family in a sense. The Motorola RAZR V3 family. I'm sure most of you have either seen one, held one, or owned one at some point in your lives. But there are differences between each of these models, and maybe, as a phone enthusiast or a collector, it would be valuable for some of you guys to know these finer details. Let's start over here on the left with the Motorola RAZR V3. This is the GSM version. Let's remove its battery cover. We note at first that it is an AT&T version. It would take a SIM card right here, which I do not have a SIM card in this one. Its user interface is pretty generic. I won't be turning this one on to show you anything because it will not work at this point because I don't have a SIM card in it. These older GSM phones do require a SIM to work. Let's go over some more details about this phone. We can see that it has a flat camera lens. It don't have the hump like you see on these two models here. We'll go over that in a moment, but it is flat. We look around the phone. Here are the volume keys. Here's another shortcut key of some kind. I think it was the camera, and this activated the say a command feature on most versions of this phone. We see on this side of the hinge we have a lanyard hook. Some people attach little charms to their phone or had even a wrist strap, something like that, that they hooked in right here. This phone has been disassembled once because the previous owner got it a little dirty. I had to clean it up rather thoroughly. Looking on the other side of the phone, we see a mini USB port. All the phones here in front of us charge with a mini USB port, but the orientation of this port is going to be a topic later on, so note which way it is facing. Look around the back. Here is its speaker. It does not have a headphone jack or anything like that, but we see here, I'll remove my protective film for a moment, has seen some use, as you can tell by the screen, a few little dings and nicks here. But this keypad is pretty straightforward. It's not upraised, which some people did not like, but it gave the phone its thin profile. It's a very iconic keypad. Each of these phones has some variation of this. We'll put the protective foam back in here. That way the buttons won't rub against the screen and make it any more scratched and dinged than it already is. And we'll put her to the side for a moment. Now let's focus on this one. This phone is a Motorola V3M. We see it has the camera hump, volume keys, and shortcut key on this side like its sister, the V3. This is a CDMA variant. As you can tell on the back here, it's a Verizon version. We open this up here and take out this battery, which honestly looks kind of off-brand to me, even though it says Motorola. This is not a standard RAZR battery, but this phone does work and charge using this battery. But we see the little port here is actually a memory card port. So here, M stands for memory, since it can support either a 1 or 2 gigabyte SD card, which was quite the feature at the time, since most mobile phones didn't have that. We see the same lanyard hook and say a command key on this side. But this is what's weird about this phone. Let's power it on. Note the Verizon wireless splash screen, but you will soon see that this user interface is quite different from most Motorola phones of the time. I'm sure most of you know what that UI looked like. Let's see, I might have to hide the number here. They have a tendency to flash the number when they power on, so we don't want anyone's old phone number floating around online. And if I show too many area codes on this channel, you guys could get a fix on my location, and I can't have that. But mainly for the previous owners of this phone. But we look around in here, and we notice this kind of folder type user interface. This is a Verizon proprietary version of the UI. Checking some things out, we find text messaging. Now, as promised, I'll show you a little demonstration of how this used to be done. For each key, you see the letters on each key, and had to press it the number of times corresponding to what number the letter was on the key. So let's text the word hello. Have to wait a little bit if you want to text 2 consecutive letters on the same key. And that's how we used to do it. This was called I think the T9 input. Don't want to save that. So we'll just keep going. But that's how we used to input text. Now let's test the audio on these phones. It's pretty standard across the board. So it's harder to find the ringtones on this one because it's hidden under the Get It Now panel, which makes you think that you're shopping for content rather than accessing what's already on the phone. Pretty standard list of Motorola ringtones, little MIDI sounds. Let's just try one. Oh. Well, seems her battery is getting low. We won't let her discharge completely. We'll continue the ringtone tests on the next phone, since they all pretty much had the same stuff, except for one special edition and a few other network proprietary things. But remember, for the V3M, there is a camera hump and a memory card slot. That's how you differentiate it from the other RAZRs. Now let's move on to the next phone in line, the Motorola V3C. It also has a camera hump, but if we turn it around, it doesn't have any special ports. No SIM slot, no SD card slot, nothing like that. It was the standard CDMA version of this phone, and the one I used as a daily driver for the longest, except mine was Altel. We'll see that this one came from an odd carrier. I'm not entirely sure where this one came from. Sorry for the delay there. This phone happened to flash the previous owner's number, and I did not want that being displayed. So I just cut that out. Also, we had a little bit of noise interference. Got people walking around in here, doors opening, things like that. Well, let's have a look around this one. First thing we're going to do is check out the ringtones and show you one sure way to tell that you have a V3. These are all the stock ringtones. This phone has been factory reset, but it will have this sound, RAZR V3C, and it sounds like this. So, if the RAZR that you have has this ringtone, a camera hump, and also no special ports under here, it is in fact a V3C. Now let's get her powered off and move on to the next one. I wonder why it says hello Moto if it's powering down. It's always been something I found odd about these phones. And now we'll look at this one, the RAZR V3A. And it is called the V3A specifically because it is the Altel variant. There is a version that is the V3S that's made specifically for Sprint. We look around it, it looks standard compared to the rest. flat camera, a little bit of dirt, but it's got this nice textured aluminum here. And this has got to be one of my favorite variants of the RAZR. The only other variant that I know of to have had this textured aluminum case was the AT&T exclusive V3XX, which I'll show an image of her here, but she has an inverse USB port. It's oriented the other way. I believe she also has an SD card slot, and the camera up here is wider. Now, I don't own one of these that's in any presentable condition. Here's the one that I own now, and let's just say whoever found that phone was not happy with it. Friend gave it to me out of a find in a warehouse, but I'm not really sure what happened to that thing. It's spare parts at this point. Now, let's get this one powered on. Oh, first I need to show you this. It also has no SD card or SIM slot. Now we see here that this one looks like it took on a little moisture. Now this one does work. It's not water damaged. It probably came from a very humid climate. Which, I mean, I could check the area code on this since CDMA phones retain their numbers, but I'm not going to do that. Because again, the less area codes you guys see floating around on this channel, the better. Let's make sure this one powers on and does not flash the number. And here she is reminding us again she's an Altel phone. Covering up the screen. Again, because they do display the previous number. And here we are. Pretty standard stuff. We go in here and see, oh my, what has happened here? I said she was in perfect order, but I've never seen the menu do this. That's the thing about these old phones. I'm adjusting the screen just in case it's a ribbon cable related issue, but this coloring is not something that was common. If yours is doing this, it probably has a problem, especially seeing this gradient here, which we see here, it's fine. And now it's sort of going away. I'm normally able to tell pretty well what's going on with these things, but that's just weird. And there it goes again. Okay. Apparently this phone needs more help. But I have a few more of these. They came in red, black, this nice textured finish. But apparently this one's being squirrely today. Told you not to be squirrely, V3. I told you we were going to be presenting you to the world. But, oh well. Phone's gonna do what a phone's gonna do. Now, another thing to note. Another way to tell if you have a V3A. I know you all have done it, and it may or may not have been slightly illegal, but Bluetoothing ringtones. We've all done it at least once. This one, and this one could use any ringtone that you gave them as a ringtone transferred via Bluetooth. This one, however, cannot. It's a DRM feature that Motorola, or maybe even Altel, added to the phones with these later revisions. Let's put these back in here. I'll talk about a couple more phones and touch on a few more little details about the V3 series and the RAZR design in general. I'm going to show here on the screen, since sadly I do not own these yet, the RAZR V3i. You could also find it known as V3E, V3R, or V3T. Notice that it has the Motorola symbol underneath the glass and not protruding out from the case like this, like all the rest of these have. Another one, I've already mentioned the V3XX because of its textured finish on most revisions. Another thing to note are the RAZR 2 V8 and V9, which were direct successors to the RAZR line. Now I know what you're thinking, V8 sounds like a type of motor rather than a type of phone, but I assure you that's what it's called. Google it, look it up. They're very nice phones, but sadly not part of my collection yet. And Motorola continued with this design language in a couple more phones. I'll lay these two out in front of us, but I won't power them on because their UI is pretty standard. This one, if I remember correctly, and this one both have similar user interface to the V3C and the V3A. But this is the Motorola RAZR, which you can even tell by the name, you can tell by the curved plate down here, the thin form factor, although if we compare it, it's about the same thickness as its cousins here, the RAZR series, but with a more narrow design, which made it a bit more pocketable. Sadly, the front of this one is cracked, which that happens with glass fronts. That's why we should move away from glass being such a prominent material on smartphones. Its USB port is turned the opposite way from the RAZR. It also has the volume keys and some sort of shortcut key and probably a voice command key over here. It also has MP3 functionality with these 3 capacitive buttons right here on the glass panel. This one is it's actually, I think it's called a RAZR Vegas, but the model number is VE20. You can see in its form factor and design language, comparing it to the V3A here, that it is directly made with the same design as the RAZRs, just a little bit more narrow, more pocketable, but from my observation, a tiny bit thicker. Just by a couple millimeters. Nothing too substantial or noticeable. The difference with this one, though, is it must be more modern. If I can get this little flap open. It charges via micro USB, the same as most Android phones up until, say, 2017, when the USB-C was introduced. Let's put this protective foam back on here and get her ready to be stored again. And put this one's protective foam back on as well. Because again, don't want the buttons eating into the screen. And there we have it. These are the Motorola RAZRs. There were a few more like the V3X, the RAZR slider series. Motorola continued with this design for a long time since these were such successful and popular phones, and even as a collector, someone who receives the phones as donations, I have accumulated quite a lot of Motorola RAZRs. I'm not going to show you all of them because they can't all fit up here, up under my little area here. And a lot of them are the same. I only have one of these V3s working. I've got 2 or 3 V3Ms, 2 or 3 V3Cs, and like 5 or 6 V3As. But only one with this finish. The others are red and black. And one belonged to a relative of mine, and it's kept in a very special place. Now, there were a lot of imitators. A lot of other companies tried to mimic this style of phone, but only Motorola could do it like this. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Any collectors out there, I hope you found this useful if you're looking to purchase one of these old RAZRs. At least now you know what you're buying. And maybe it could help you complete your collection of V3s. And if I ever get my hands on a V3i or a V3X or V3XX, or any of the RAZR 2 series, or anything else like this, I will certainly let you guys know, either on this channel or on my Instagram. Links to that in the description, along with links to RiffValley's Soundcloud, since he helped me with the theme music. Go check him out. Well, I hope you all have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Don't eat too much turkey and fall asleep on a relative's couch. This is RetroComs, signing off.